Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 375. I am your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is presently the 8th of the 4th, the 4th being April, right? Let me make sure I have those months correctly. I occasionally mix them up. It happens. I occasionally get a little mixed up here and there with these months, but we're over here in the beautiful island paradise of Trinidad and Tobago. The 8th of April, the months are speeding along. And what are we talking about tonight? Well, tonight we have a couple issues to deal with. What seems to have been nearly at the top of a lot of online conversation, at least over on Twitter for today, was one American influencer, streamer, who went over to Jamaica. And in his Jamaican visit, you know, he got down to some heavy daggering. Quite a bit of daggering was done. And a lot of people across the Caribbean seemed to have been offended by that. They were offended by his daggering antics. And they seem to say that it misrepresents what the Caribbean is supposed to be, what we are supposed to represent, that this isn't an accurate representation of it. Now, to be very honest with you, I don't know. I don't know about all of that, because for me, a lot of the content I see coming out of the Caribbean anyway seems to be along these lines. This seems to be what we do anyway. Like the contention a lot of people have with this, I am not totally understanding it. I'm not totally understanding it, to be very honest with you all. But we dive into that in a little bit. Let's jump into some of the news stories, the stories making the news here in Trinidad and Tobago. And one of the prime stories of these would be the firearms dealer who was abducted from Barbados and brought back to Trinidad, and he sued. And it seems like he's winning. Barbados to pay for Trini gun dealer's arrest. Miko says, I must ask my girlfriends when last you were heavily daggered for your health. My goodness. Barbados to pay for Trini gun dealer's arrest. The Barbados government has accepted the blame for the forcible removal of gun dealer Brent Thomas from his hotel on the Caribbean island by its police force in 2022. In a letter obtained by Newsday, the attorney for Barbados's Attorney General, Dale Marshall Senior Counsel, said the island's government had accepted liability on his advice. I have advised my client that the state of Barbados should accept liability in respect of the claim for breach of Section 18 of the Constitution of Barbados. The section deals with the right to a fair hearing and protection of the law. Ford's letter also said, in the circumstances, kindly send me a claim and quantum together with authorities in support of the same. He also added, I am of the view that many of the documents requested by you touch and concern liability, which my client has agreed to accept. The parties are locked in negotiations on an agreed settlement, which is likely to be substantial. Thomas initiated legal actions seeking compensation for the egregious conduct of the Barbadian authorities, as well as several declarations relating to his arrest, detention, and forced repatriation by the Barbados Police Service. He demanded to know who gave the directive which led to his unlawful abduction from a hotel room in Barbados on October 5, 2022, as stated by Justice Devendra Ramprasad in his ruling on Thomas's constitutional challenge in April 2023. It is well established that individually or cumulatively members of the Barbados Police Service acted out with the law and refused to afford our client the protection of the law afforded to him by the Constitution. The laws of Barbados did not authorize any of the acts of the BPS relative to our client, which occurred on October 5th, 2022, Marshall was told by Thomas's attorneys in a pre-action protocol letter. Here's the thing, it's kind of sad for Barbados. Barbados wrongdoing here is blindly listening to her neighbors. Barbados took Trinidad's word for it. Trinidad sent out an emergency call. Hey, Barbados, listen, we have an escaped criminal. He's running away and he escaped to Barbados. Please take him and return him to us. And Barbados, trusting Trinidad, didn't bother to go through all of the proper channels and the deportation notices and all of that. They trusted Trinidad. Oh, this is an emergency. This is a dangerous man. Well, we'll take him and return him to you all. You all trusted members of the TTPS. Well, Barbados learned that, unfortunately, you cannot trust the TTPS or the Ministry of National Security. Listen, this is kind of sad when you think about it. Poor Barbados. And maybe we as Trinidadians need to learn from Barbados. Barbados attempted to trust our police service and our national security infrastructure, and they were betrayed. And now, very likely, according to this article and according to what it looks like, they may have to pay this firearms dealer a hefty sum. Imagine that. Barbados. The state had also admitted that Thomas's return to TT was unlawful, but has appealed aspects of Rampersad's ruling. The appeal will be heard towards the end of July. Rampersad is also expected to decide on compensation, which could also be substantial. So, by the way, he did win his motion in Trinidad and Tobago, just by the way. So he might get a serious lump sum from Barbados, as well as a serious lump sum from Trinidad after. But you see, the difference with Trinidad and Tobago is before Trinidad goes through paying the firearms dealer, we have to, as we usually do, as is common in this country, we have to ensure that this court case is lengthened to the fullest extent so that all lawyers involved will get their URP checks. Remember, I regularly say one of the things I've realized from paying more and more attention is government is basically URP for lawyers. Unemployment and unemployment relief program for lawyers. That's what governments are. So the government lost this case. The judge basically lambasted the government, slung them up all around, and said you all acted extremely inappropriately and basically kidnapped this man. The judge already ruled this. But no, the government can't take that. Although the Barbados government basically admitted liability without having to go through all of the long rigmarole, of course the Trinidad and Tobago government cannot do that. You see, this case has to go to the Privy Council. It has to last a couple years more. At least $20 million must reach into the friends and families' coffers. I mean, there are senior officials in our government who have husbands and wives who are lawyers. How else will they get cases if the government doesn't extend all of these obvious cases? White Leather says if he is to continue his business in Trinidad, he will have to have a good relationship with the Ministry of National Security. It's in his best interest to play ball. No, not true actually. That's not necessarily how it goes. There are contractors who sue the ministries day in, day out and are still given contracts. You know that if someone can prove that you are purposefully, as a government agency, selecting them out for negative treatment, they can sue you on that too. So he would sue the government now, win some money from the Trinidad government, win some money from the Bajan government, and then when they attempt to stop his contracts being sent in his direction for his actual business, he will sue the government again for discrimination and very likely win again. That's how those things work. And also, it's not directly always up to the ministers on where the contracts go. It's not supposed to be. So it's not necessarily how it works. You might be surprised. You're thinking about that as a small man. White leather, you're thinking about that as a small man. You know, as a small man, if you mash the corner of those people up there, they will make sure you never work again. But that's not how the big boys go. They sue each other. They will sue the government, take a 20 million from the government, while they are currently bidding on 50 different contracts from the same said government. That's just how the thing rules at that level. There are lawyers who are hired to represent, to sue the state. And then the state may hire them to defend the state on another case. It's just the way the thing goes at that level. Thomas's legal team wants the names and ranks of the members of the TTPS or any other party who made the request and who contacted CARICOM Impacts, which is the implementation agency for crime and security, a special law enforcement agency of CARICOM. The names and or ranks of the designation of the persons from Barbados who received this information from the members of the TTPS or any other party, the names and or ranks of persons of the members of the TTPS or any other party who interacted with members of the BPS. He also wants the names of the ministers from TT and Barbados who interacted with each other, as well as copies of all correspondence and written communication exchange between them, as well as with any public official or police officer, including those of Impacts. Thomas is also seeking the full report Marshall received from the Barbados Commissioner of Police. Included in the lengthy list of requests are the reports from the Regional Security System Impacts and the Ministry of National Security, which Marshall referred to in his address to Parliament. Added to his requests was a copy of the flight plan and the manifest of the plane. Listen, the man is asking for everything, and I give him right. Because this is at the point where you might be able to squeeze. You might be able to squeeze here. You have them, you have the political group before the judicial branch, where they are not supposed to have power to sway things. And again, we'll bring back up the thing that we spoke about regularly last week, and we regularly bring it up in discussion in these lives, the reality of the Caribbean Court of Justice and why an opposition party like the United National Congress may not be interested in going over to the Caribbean Court of Justice. Because you could foresee the UNC thinking in a manner that this case, if it wasn't under the purview of the Privy Council and had to go to the Caribbean Court of Justice, you would wonder what sway our government could have if they had enough sway to call a Caribbean country and organize a joint kidnapping between Barbados and Trinidad of a citizen. If our government is able to trick the Barbados government into kidnapping one of the Trinidadian citizens, would they not be able to have some kind of influence over the Caribbean Court of Justice? And then, can you imagine yourself as, say, this firearms dealer? If you were this firearms dealer, and you believe that two Caribbean countries, territories, colluded to kidnap you, and in your pursuit of justice, you must go to the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is formulated out of these same Caribbean countries. like, I'm not saying the Caribbean Court of Justice will be biased. I'm not saying that by any means, but you could understand what people say when they highlight some of these things. Karim Delpesh over on YouTube says, "Night folks, make sense that Barbados having to pay since they didn't do anything to stop it, even if it was the right thing to do. Got left with the bag." Yep. Well, the way how the case went, it's kind of obvious that they're liable. In Trinidad, they found that they broke the constitution in how they did this thing. They did not go through all of the right steps. That's obvious. There really isn't much to fight. If you didn't go through the right steps and you took a man from his hotel room, put him on a flight and sent him to Trinidad in captivity, that is kidnapping. And obviously you are going to be held liable. For me, like, if I was a Bajan citizen, I would wonder, I would ask my government, is there some way to sue Trinidad? If I'm telling you, if I was a Bajan citizen right now, whatever is the amount we have to pay back Mr. Brent Thomas, I want Barbados government to sue Trinidad to get it back. I never liked the idea of having an external court system, but now it makes complete sense. They broke the constitutional law. Who's taking them to court? Yep, that's the thing. That's the thing. How do we make the CCJ uncorruptible? Good question. Good night, Solomon Dyer. You see, we went through this before with the CCJ. We went through some of the details of how the CCJ selects its justices. And they really are attempting to make it unbiased and uncorruptible. They are attempting to use many different areas from the Caribbean to select these avenues of power. But the reality is, once they are human beings and there are people in charge of them getting this power, there's possibility to corrupt the thing. Daniel Knight says they can sue TNT through the same Caribbean Court of Justice no one wants. Lol. Funny stuff, eh, Daniel Knight? Funny stuff. And I'm not saying no one wants it. I'm not even saying I don't want it. I'm saying I understand why some people say they don't want it. And I can see, if I was someone who bought fully into the narratives espoused by the opposition in Trinidad and Tobago, I would be afraid of the CCJ. If I were an Indo-Trinidadian and I bought fully into the narratives and I had some suspicion of the PNM party maybe being biased against me even by my race, and then I also know that the Caribbean has a different demographic makeup, I could understand the arguments. That's all I'm saying. Good evening, Dane Khan. Good evening, I forgot my manners. Good evening, Mikhail Modesto. Is the CCJ comparable to the US Supreme Court? Not really. Not really. The US Supreme Court is actually much more corruptible than the CCJ. The US Supreme Court is basically who is in power selects who goes up. The benefit of that is once someone is there, they have a lifetime appointment. So the idea of the US Supreme Court is you put so much power in their hands that hopefully they don't feel like they're beholden to the other branches of government. The CCJ, however, the idea of how they select those judges, I can't remember all how, but it's basically a combination of law associations and law schools and senior groups in different Caribbean territories, senior legal groups, senior social groups, and they all come together and they select that. So the spread of power is admirable in the CCJ. I cannot point at the CCJ and say it's obvious that this is going to be corrupted. I cannot say that. But even still, there are some other factors to keep in mind. Where do they select the justices from? If they select the justices from a pool of the judges already there in the Caribbean, you could understand again why people would look at the track record of these judges, just as they do with the Supreme Court in the US. Like, the thing with these Supreme Courts, even the Privy Council stands above, because to some extent they literally stand outside of the fray in Trinidad and Tobago. So people could feel like they don't have a dog in the race here. So it's not like you feel like they would have a reason to be biased. They don't have a dog in the race. And the Yeri Cray says, is the Privy Council biased to the English? I don't know. Maybe one might assume, but it's not regularly you see in the courts that anyone is suing England or the United Kingdom in specific. So even if they're biased, I'm not sure if they have a chance to show that as much. Well, most of the UNCR lawyers, I don't see their fair. Well, here's the problem, Mikhail Modesto. Lawyers depend on what the judges say. Lawyers depend on what the judges say. So, if I am a lawyer and I find, like, certain lawyers in Trinidad and Tobago currently have a pretty good track record of suing the state and taking it to the Privy Council and getting a good result. If I am a lawyer with loyalties to the UNC, and I already have my business model, I sue the state, I win, seems like I win 75% or so of the cases, and I carry it straight to the Privy Council. Maximum money. If you tell me we aren't going to the Privy Council now we're going to CCG. If I already win 75% of my cases at the Privy Council, what impetus would I have to want to go to the CCG? If I already have a favorable outcome coming from the Privy Council, am I hoping that a Caribbean court is going to give me a more favorable outcome? That might seem unlikely to me. So why would I want to go elsewhere? The lawyers are the people who specifically would not want to go elsewhere. But they select judges from lawyers. That's what I'm thinking. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. But as you said, they select judges from lawyers. So it's not necessarily a safe assumption that because UNC has a lot of lawyers, they're going to have a lot of judges and eventually a lot of justices on their side in the Caribbean court. I don't think that's necessarily a safe assumption they would have. Trinidad lost before the CCJ already when the Bahamas sued us for the trading tariff. And I don't doubt that. I'm not saying that Trinidad can't lose. I'm not saying that at all. And by the way, I'll reiterate again. I am not saying the CCJ is a bias institute or it is corruptible or able to sway. The CCJ might even be better than the Privy Council. I'm just discussing and saying I can see the points that people make on the contrary. Mikhail Modestil says, so is it these political powers trying to remove the sway of wins the lawyers been having? I can't say that. Frank C. Prasad was a UNC president nomination. Yes, Daniel Knights. But if the PNM is in power more than the UNC, who would generally get more of those nominations? A UNC president or a PNM president? And of course, Mr. Double G is not letting this opportunity slip by. Gary to write PCA Police Commission on Brent Thomas fiasco. Former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith claims that the truth about the government's involvement in the controversial 2022 arrest of Brent Thomas in Barbados will soon be revealed after the Barbados government accepted liability for breaching Thomas's constitutional rights. He said he intends to write the PCA and the Police Service Commission on the matter if need be. In a statement issued by his party, the National Transformation Alliance, yesterday, Griffith said the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago will soon face another example of a blatant lie, which shows how deceptive, immoral, and unethical the government is. I call on the police, on the Commissioner of Police to do her job without fear or favor, and I urge the government to immediately come clean and fire the minister and other officials involved so as to show some respect to citizens who deserve the truth and who must be guaranteed that no one is untouchable. I also wrote the Police Complaints Authority, and after the minister's name is revealed, I will write the PCA again, as well as the Police Service Commission, should Commissioner Harewood Christopher fail to adhere to a responsibility to have this matter thoroughly investigated. Michael Modesto says, honestly, bro, we as a region need many changes. I welcome the CCJ and a Michaela-led UNC and a new PNM leader. I'm not seeing a new party gathering any support. Well, to be honest about when people talk about new parties in Trinidad and Tobago, I don't see new parties making much of an impact. If you want new parties, the idea of new parties to me in our system, how this parliamentary first past the post system works with new parties is you want coalition building. That's what you need. You need parties that are able to appeal to a cross-section of people and then use that to build coalitions. That's what you need. It's not about just getting one third party to come in and stick a spoke in the wheel between the UNC and PNM. I don't think that's going to happen. The MSJ to me initially had the right idea. That I think the People's Partnership did Trinidad and Tobago a disservice. The MSJ to me had the right idea. Okay, as the MSJ, you are the Union Party. That's your party. You are the Labour Party. Attempt to get all of the Labour votes, to be able to control them as a voting group, and then you use that as a card, as a trump card in your hand to use in negotiating for power. COP do the same thing. NJAC was supposed to do the same thing. And if you had all of these different parties with actual constituents that they could call up, a group of followers that they could call up and say, this is the group that will follow me into this coalition, then you could have things that sway groups. That's how you do things like that. But the idea that some magical third party is going to come in and be able to convince voters that they could vote for them and let them win over the UNC or PNM, I don't see that happening. I honestly do not see that happening. To me, the best opportunity for that was the COP, and even in my opinion, if the COP was successful, I think for the most part they would have just displaced the UNC. Not necessarily become a third party where you see a three-horse race happening. The first past the post, the nature of this electoral system is it's a two-man race, unless you have coalition building going on. And then it becomes kind of chips land as they may. You look at the United Kingdom and it's nearly like a struggle for a prime minister to hold on to power because it's about coalition building. And people within your party, within your coalition that allow you to lead, they aren't there totally loyal to you to a fault. They aren't going to jump every time. They aren't going to ask you how high every time you say jump. They are there for their own pressure groups. And I think that would actually have been more useful. But here we are, hoping for the third party. A strong third party is one that can pull PNM supporters and UNC supporters. But, tribalism is the political play here. That's a very difficult thing to do. That's a very difficult thing to do, Mikhail Modesto. Because to pull UNC and PNM supporters, most people in our electoral system vote against a party. I think if you could take a survey of voters for PNM and ask them and sit with them and ask them the majority of the reasons why. The majority of the reasons why would have to do with we don't want the UNC in governance. And then on the other hand, for the UNC, you sit and you ask most of the UNC voters why. I think the majority of their reasons would be they don't want the PNM in governance. They aren't voting for a party, they're more voting against a party. If someone is an anti-PNM voter, not a UNC voter, but an anti-PNM voter, how are you going to get them to vote for a party with the PNM voters too? How are you going to make that appeal? Because as an anti-PNM voter, here's my problem. If I see a party that appeals to anti-PNM voters, and I start to support them, I am immediately going to get worried that the PNM is going to obviously win the next election. Because if I'm an anti-PNM voter and I vote for the third party instead of the UNC, that means the UNC is for sure not going to win. And I might split up the anti-PNM votes. The anti-PNM votes would have been the UNC votes that maybe could have caused the UNC to win. But with a third party involved, if the anti-PNM votes vote for the UNC and the third party, then obviously the PNM would win. So all the UNC needs to do is keep reminding me that a vote for the third party is a vote not keeping all the anti-PNM votes in the most likely place to get rid of the dirty, wicked PNM. And if preeminent in my mind is getting rid of the dirty, wicked PNM that does nothing good for Trinidad and Tobago, a third party just isn't going to make sense. UNC pulled both PNM and UNC voters in 2010. That's how they got 29 seats or 33 seats. Yes, they did pull both PNM and UNC voters. That is true. But the UNC isn't a third party. That's the whole thing. When the UNC pulled PNM voters in 2010, those PNM voters weren't of the misconception that another party is going to come in without the UNC. They knew that they were voting for the UNC. You speak to some of the people, because I had discussions about that, and a lot of the idea was that many of them who were PNM voters that voted for the partnership, they were still anti-UNC to a great deal, but they believed that the coalition, the partnership, would have been able to balance their worries about the UNC, so they voted for the other parties among the group, hoping that those other parties could balance the anti-UNC. That's why they did it. They had no misconceptions about the PNM not losing. That's different from a third party. A third party is seeking to grab PNM voters who would not vote for UNC. So those are anti-UNC PNM voters. Those are hard people to get to vote for a group that might just help the UNC win. That's not an easy constituency to sway. I don't think that's an easy constituency to sway. Since I born, I only hear UNC and PNM. We need a change. And sad we cannot see anyone as strong. Well, since the United States existed, they only had the Democrats and the Republicans. Labour and the Tories over in the United Kingdom, they seem to have the sway. What's the two parties over in Jamaica? JLP and UNP or whatever those parties, two parties. A coalition party, I believe, is one of the parties, but it's two parties in Guyana too. That's what the PP was trying to do, get the undecided, but mission impossible. The PP was failing at getting the undecided. If you want to get someone said the third group, the non-voters are non-voters because they don't vote, while I saw Ronnie said no, they just don't like the options. I think it's a mixture of both. Most non-voters, I think, are people who just don't tend to vote because they don't like voting for whatever different reason, many different reasons they don't like voting, and very few people may be able to convince them to come out to vote. I actually do believe that. However, we have seen a person in modern politics who was able to do just that. RFK out there sounding like Phil Republicans and Democrats is the same. Well, RFK trying his best. He's trying to win from the Democrats, while the Democrats always cheat in terms of who they allow to go for them. That's what I'm speaking about with the cheat. They always determine who they allow to go for them. So, hard luck. But yeah, there was someone who was able to appeal to that third constituency in modern politics. And I'm not talking in Trinidad, I'm talking political the world over. And that's Donald Trump. And many people, if you ask people who are obsessive Democrats, many black Trinidadians are default Democrats and they don't even know why. They don't understand that they are biased by race, just how some of them look at the UNC being biased by race. They don't even understand that, but they are biased. Trinidadians hate Trump and they don't even understand why, some of them. But if you look at what he was able to do, there were many Republicans that did not vote for Trump. Many Republicans were what they called never Trumpers. There were a group in the Republican Party they called the never Trumpers. They hated him. But he was able to get a lot of first-time voters. First-time voters was a large part of who he was able to bring out to vote for him. And if you look at what he did, you may see what might appeal to first-time voters. How some of the techniques, if you are looking to appeal to that constituency, look at some of what he did and you might do that. You might be able to get some of that. And I think, personally, the person in Trinidad who fits into that mold, and I've said this many, I'm just repeating myself of things I have said before, but the person who seems to fit that mold the best, and this isn't an endorsement of the person. This isn't saying they're good. This isn't saying who I want to run Trinidad. This is just speaking about the facts as I see it. Is one PDP leader. No, not Pandy. Pandy does not fit the mold of Trump. Michaela, she does not fit the mold of Trump. Listen. I am not saying this as someone who might favor Trump and, okay, well, we should favor Duke in Trinidad, in the Trinidad situation. No, I am saying Duke fits that mold in the Trinidad example. He fits that mold in the Trinidad example. The person I think, this is my opinion, the person I think, if they were to run the perfect campaign, the person most likely to pull out people who never voted in Trinidad I might say it's Dukey Boy. I might say it's Dukey Boy. Duke was able to get fellas on the block to come out and vote for him. That's not saying that his political messaging was so good. Maybe Jack too, 100% RL. The reason I wouldn't say Jack is because Jack doesn't seem like he has the mindset like that. But if he intended to, I think he could. I think he could if Jack intended to. So, like, if Jack intended to make a run for the UNC, like Trump made a run for the Republicans, he intended to basically upset the UNC order, take over the UNC, and run the UNC as his party and go up for elections. I could see Jack winning just as Trump did. Because the same thing would essentially happen. He would get the UNC votes, the Republican votes. Some of the UNC might not vote for him, some might not like him, but that's inconsequential. Because he will get some PNM crossover votes, just as Trump got crossover votes. Trump got a lot of the Bernie Bros votes. If you all paid attention to the elections back then, Bernie Sanders, the more left-leaning guy, a lot of the Bernie Bros from 2016 went over to Trump. So, I think Jack would get crossover votes, and he would also be able to pull out the first ever voters. I think Jack Warner or Duke are the kind of people to pull out. I understand this is not the United States, Lyndon Mack. We are drawing parallels. Why you say this is not the United? Of course, it's not the United States, but we are human beings, and there are parallels among human beings in all societies. There are parallels. If you could look at human being societies 50,000 years ago, 500 miles away from us, there would be parallels. Lyndon Mack, are you not listening to what I'm saying? Are you not listening? Is it that you're not listening to what I'm saying? Parallels. Parallels. So, Jack Warner, I think, can fit that character. Here's why I say that. Because Jack is the kind of person, if you go on the block, if you go on the block I don't know how many of you lime on the block or take a pass through on the block every now and again. Jack Warner is the guy most likely to get some of those block guys to actually go and vote. Like Duke did. That's what Duke did. In case some of you don't know, that's what Duke went on the block. Duke had some shady characters in his embrace. He had some shady characters in his embrace. And here's the thing. I could tell you, fellas on the block, don't vote. Fellas on the block don't vote. There are tens of thousands of votes standing on street corners, sitting on a old bench, on an old table, on a bucket. On a bucket all about Trinidad. Tens of thousands of votes. And it's not like those fellas don't have the time to vote. They don't care to vote. If you could get them through whatever means, I am not saying that all the means are above board. I am not saying that this would be good for Trinidad. Ben, I hope people understand this. I hope we have enough bandwidth, intelligent bandwidth to be able to hold propositional situations in our mind. What if? How would you feel if you didn't have breakfast this morning? An IQ question that is going on the internet these days. 2015 was time to regroup and consolidate. I live in Charlottesville. Trust me, Jack is loved. I know. Ronnie's Will says they didn't care till they get a few bears. Mikhail Modesto says, I used to drive for the PNM pulling out voters. Block men don't vote. They will run your MC. Born to Play says, and that's the problem. If everybody vote, we might just have a change. Well, If everyone vote, yeah, we might have a change, but I am not of the view personally that everyone voting is going to be a good thing. I am not of that view, because everyone doesn't pay attention, everyone doesn't think logically and soundly, everyone isn't wise enough. So everyone voting, I am not of the assumption that more voters automatically is going to be a positive thing for Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not of that view. I don't buy that. Not everyone should have the right to vote, Ronnie says, while Lyndon Mack says bad view to have. Here's the thing, Lyndon Mack. I agree more with Ronnie than you. I think political systems have devolved more and more as they open the voting to people who have less and less skin in the game. If a government is spending my money and you give no money to that government, should you vote for who runs that government? I don't get the sense and sensibility in that. If you sell that narrative, then what you saying is your constitutional rights won't matter. Well, then we'd have to change the constitution, obviously, if that was the case. But there have been constitutions where everyone didn't have a right to vote. So you could have rights in a constitution, but you don't have a right to vote. I mean, children have rights, but children can't vote. So the idea that if you can't vote, that means that you would be without rights and be abused in that society, that's not necessarily true. I don't buy that. I think people who don't put into the system shouldn't determine how the system spends. And I think the problem we get in the system is that lots of people love deciding how the money is spent. Very few like putting in. And I don't like the idea of people determining what happens to my resources when they aren't part of the pool. Daniel Knight says, what parameters will you pit to restrict voting for some? Now you're asking a very difficult question. I was talking theoretically, all hairy, fairy, fancy in the air there. It's nice to think about that in a vacuum, like it would be nice if less people voted. And those who really cared and put the resources out were the only ones. That would be nice to see, but how exactly do we do that? The systems before, how they did that was only the landowners voted. That was one way they did it, but then that's difficult because now you could have people renting and they could still be paying in, but they don't own land without contributing anything to society. By asking, let me read just now. I asking here, do you think our election votes is done fairly? Born to Play asks. I think our election votes are by and large fair. By and large. I won't put my head on a block to say everything is 100% above board, but I won't go about saying I think our elections are corrupt. I wouldn't say that. Non-payers don't vote. Should they pay taxes? Non-voters don't vote. Should they pay taxes? Ooh, good question, Lyndon Mack. Good question. A general knowledge quiz before voting. Mikhail Modesto says, so you saying if you tax bracket is NIS and health surcharge, no voter rights and pay voters. Non-voters don't vote. Should they pay taxes? If it was that I pay taxes in order to vote, that would have been an interesting predicament. where I pay no taxes, I get no vote. And once I pay taxes, I select who votes. I select. That would have been interesting. You know, I'll give you a hard debate. Yeah, Lyndon, it's not that I'm ignoring you. I still have some more to go through. That's the reason why I haven't jumped into the box yet. We still have quite a bit more to go through. I won't pay taxes, Rooney said. Right, he said. The whole tax and government idea, that has been a predicament humans have been trying to organize for millennia. What exactly is the best setup here? As some anarchists, there are what do they call themselves? The anarcho-capitalists. They believe everything should be owned by someone and no government says anything about anything. My land is my land, your land is your land. We could come together and build roads if we want to. We could pay people to use their roads if we want to. No state involvement in anything. Anarcho-capitalism. In a perfect world, that would be perfect, but I don't think we live in a perfect world. If you had a choice, pay taxes and you can vote, or don't pay taxes and don't vote, what will you do? I will pay taxes and vote, if I'm being honest with you. If that was the choice in Trinidad and Tobago, that either we pay taxes and vote or don't pay taxes and don't vote, I'd have paid taxes and voted. Because what that would have meant is much less people are doing the voting and much less people are doing the paying of taxes. So it would have at least felt to me that I might have had more of a say in that government. Daniel Knight says you're forgetting Trinidad is not a real place. True. I would have paid. Because you would have the feeling like you have more of a say in that government. If the only money you can spend as a government is the money I give you and I select who goes up there, I feel like I'd have more of a sway. But if the government could spend my money, but then they could go through to communities and offer everyone in the community $10 each from my money. Like, think about that. A politician goes and bribes people with your money to get votes on how to spend your money. I'd skip once I get to live in an area only around non-voters. Born to Play says we need to have a balance economically looking at the world it crashing. RL says it means only important people will be allowed to vote. Interesting. And it would be very interesting how the voting would go. And I think the kind of leaders you get would be a different kind of leader. I don't think Dr. Rowley ends up as the head of a government where only payers of taxes are the voters. An arrogant, condescending, paternalistic leader like that is not who paying people vote for. I am not paying you to talk down to me like I am your son. Leaders like that never reach the top. Yeah, and that's why I say I don't have the view that just everyone should vote, because that's how you end up with condescending leaders, because you end up with people that don't mind being condescended to. I know that my paycheck comes from government. I know my paycheck comes from government. I know my housing comes from government. I know my schooling comes from government. I daddy government. So of course government could talk to me like they're my daddy, because they are basically my daddy. But if I am paying you, you are my employee. You are not my daddy. and you would behave as such. Unfortunately, that's not the system we have. Those aren't employees anymore. They take our money and use our money to bribe the general nation to get votes. That's how it works. That's why when people talk about taxing the rich and giving it to the poor, like, I don't think they think properly of the kind of government that's going to end up with when they think about that. I want a Zadi government, Ronnie said. Well, marry a Zadi and let him govern you. He could govern you all you like. All the governing you want, your own personal Zadi, when you marry him, he could do all of that for you. Ariel says, I was surprised nearby island secondary school healthcare taxes, nothing is free. True. God bless Trinidad and Tobago, Ariel says. You know, that's so true, Ariel. That's so true. Many Trinidadians don't have that perspective. We think that everywhere in the world is just as sweet as Trinidad and Tobago. So Trinidad and Tobago is particularly evil because everywhere else is sweet, but Trinidad just has the bad things too. Trinidad is the only bad place. Everywhere else thinks, well, go out there and see if you get pension just so now. See if reaching 65 people, go see if every government on earth just pays you for reaching 65. Oh, you reach 65, granny? Well done. Here, look, a couple $1,000 every month. Go see it. Go up the islands, go Vinci and see if you're getting that. Go. Mikhail Modesto, I will not have you. I will not have you speak about my honorable prime minister in that manner. I will not have you speak about him in that manner. And, you know, I don't even think that's his character, you know, Mikhail Modesto. I don't think his character is that Ezekiel. I don't picture Dr. Rowlers being an Ezekiel character when he was a child. I think he was the class prefect. The annoying class prefect. And this isn't even meant as an insult to the man. I just think this is who his character is. I think he was that person that likes being in that authority position. That's just the way I figure it. It seems like he enjoys authority. It just seems that way to me. When they ask who wants to be prefect, he puts up his hand. Okay, Crispin Nicholas, you know, like those titles honorable. If you're saying he's not honorable, then by that metric, which prime minister ever was honorable in that case? Daniel Knight says Rowley is a Scorpio. Understand us. We don't lose soft emotions and love to be in charge. Hey! So that's the reason. Is his whole horoscope is the reason. So when Jupiter rising or Mercury falling or twisting or something, when is the best time that he should be approached? Oh, you did, Ronnie. Good for you. Good for you. Good for you. Hey, you all heard Ansa McCall is the preferred bidder for Trin City Mall. So we may be getting some improvements on the mall soon, people. The mall might be improving real soon. When Scorpio listen, I don't know nothing about horoscope on it, to be honest with you. I just have no idea. I've been told which one is mine. That's all I know. We eat badly here. We're not living that age. Yes, going to the hospital, 45 years old here, have diabetic. True. And Sound Grand Bazaar also. Yes. Trin City have more stores than the entire of Tobago. October 24th to November 23rd. Oh, Scorpio season. Yeah, Answer seems to be the one who's going to come out and, like, really and truly, who else was going to own it in a way? Who else you're going to put there? And maybe we might see some improvements, because the mall has basically been stagnant for a couple years while all of this was happening. So maybe we might see some improvements on Trin City Mall in the coming year or so, with Answer jumping in. And what happened to the skating rink? I think they closed real quick. Where's this story? I found this to be a very interesting story. Let's pull up this story from The Guardian. Yeah. Cops probe online TNT porn ring. Child videos, nudes being sold in Telegram groups. Trinidadian men and women are selling and trading child rape videos on the social media app Telegram for as much as $200. I am reading it, Krimak. I am going to read. Which story? Are you talking about the one I'm reading right now? Or are you talking about the mall story? Though, when I read this, I am interested to know, and I think it could seem like you're picking at straws, but I am interested to know, when they say child videos like this, are they basically trying to say statutory? Or are they saying that in this was obviously content with grown men and children? Because those aren't the same thing. And even in the case of statutory, it is possible for two young people to engage in carnal knowledge without it being grape. So I wonder if, in pursuit of a sensational headline and byline, if actually they are misrepresenting this story. And I feel like they are. From after reading this story, I feel like they are, because at no point in this story did they talk about videos being of the kind of child nature you expect. But if what they're saying is there are images of underage girls there, that's not necessarily the same thing. I am not saying that it's a good thing. I am not saying it should happen. I am not saying it's a positive thing. I'm not saying it's legal. I'm just saying it's different from what the article says. And I think words are important. I think meanings are important. I think you should say what words mean and use the words that mean what they mean, and not just pull something there just for the sake of sensationalism. At least one person involved in a porn ring says 207 videos are available for that price. He's on a Telegram group called Trini School Leaks Twerks Videos, which had 945 members as of yesterday. That chat is a market for buying and selling child graphic content. Pornographic content featuring local females, which range from young girls to older women, are also available for purchase on Telegram. In addition, some men are even selling intimate pictures their ex-partners would have sent to the groups for money. If interested persons can't pay for content, some men are trading photos of women for other nude images. I spend my money for this. Real so-and-so stinking here, one person posted in one group, which has 8,525 members. No, this was a Guardian. Oh yeah, when you go through the story, it's Telegram. Here's the thing. They're talking about the police, and the police are involved, and the Guardian media had their specialists involved, and all of this, and all of this, and all of this. Telegram hosts terrorist groups. The CIA would like to break Telegram too, you know. Telegram has been engineered to not be able to be breached like that. So I think what we are actually stumbling upon here, Telegram, the app, yes. What we are actually stumbling upon here is consequences for actions that are indelible, that you cannot remove, that you cannot punish, that the only way to fix is to victim blame. The only way to fix this problem is to victim blame. Look at the victims and try to tell them, or tell future people, don't become victims. If you take media of your body and put it on the internet, it is basically, to me, unfair to expect national security to be able to undo that. It's like, if you pee in the ocean, I know, Kermack, I know I was saying victim blaming in quotations here, how some people would consider that victim blaming. Telling young ladies not to send nudes would be considered victim blaming. That's like if I urinated in the water and I'm asking Wassa to bring back my urine for me. Like, that's not going to happen. Yeah, if I pee in the water, I can't expect somebody to separate that for me, and I can't consider it unfair if they don't. That's just the reality. The reality of life now. And you know, the thing is, this has always been the reality. It's just Telegram is making it more blatant in front of your face. The reality has always been that if you record content of your naked body and put it onto the cyberspace, you send it somewhere, you have no control over where that would reach. And okay, you could attempt to press charges how much you want. The lady who sued the cricketer how much years ago and won, I am nearly 100% sure her content is still spinning around the internet. Yeah, you sued him, you won, you feel good, you get back the money your ex did you an injustice. Good, you won money from him. But your content is still online circling. And you know how content goes. So, it may have circulated 10 years ago. For some reason, it was on the down low or something. Somebody popped back up a Telegram group. Somebody who had it on a drive somewhere, or on a phone that they still have access to somewhere. They jump in one of the Telegram groups and they want to get something. Remember, what they're doing in those groups are trading. It's like cards. They're trading them. So I want something that somebody have. And I have this old content from 10 years ago that was big 10 years ago, but people ain't see it for a while. I'm going to trade it. And then who I trade it to now see it, so they're going to send it back around again. And you're going to go viral again. And okay, you sued the man who released it before. You won the case already. What you going to do when it starts the next rounds of virality? What you gonna do? And you know, it's nearly funny to me. One of the complaints in this article, let me see if I could pull this up. There are people in the article, this is something they said. There are people with OnlyFans where these persons subscribe and take all the photos and pics and leak them into a private group, which eventually gets out to the public ones. There's a guy from Guyana with a group. He literally dates women and makes videos and leaks them all over or sells them as well. It's really disgusting, and the moral of this is overlooked as, oh well, she sent him the pics, or oh, she was always a bad thing. This isn't an excuse for this. It isn't an excuse, but it is a reason. If you have an OnlyFans, you make content and put it online. You really expect only your paid users are the ones who are going to... Every OnlyFans girls gets that now. I was literally now going to talk about OnlyFans not protecting creators. What do you mean protecting creators? What do you mean? You're an online prostitute. The aim of your industry is to take advantage of you. That's the industry. The industry is advantageous. You go into an advantageous industry and want them to not take advantage of you. Advantage is the economics of this industry. So what are we even talking about here? Like, we are attempting to make a national security issue here out of OnlyFans girls that put their content willingly on the internet and are surprised that it ends up other places. That's like, but you all remember when the NFTs were all the rage? I don't know how many of you all are as online. The non-fungible tokens, those men with the weird looking monkeys, cartoon monkeys as their profile pictures. Who was it? Justin Bieber, I think, had $1 million picture. He bought one of them for $1 million or something like that. And okay, yes, in terms of the technology, this is an uncopyable artifact you have here. No one can copy this exact thing. But I could take a screenshot of it and it would look the same and nobody else could tell the difference. And the men were out there upset over the whole internet. How dare someone take a screenshot of my NFT? That's how the OnlyFans girls sound. How dare someone take a screenshot of my NFT? Well, sis, it wasn't NFT. It was very fungible. It wasn't non-fungible. It was very fungible. Not all of them do, RL. Not all of them do. It's a minority that make the big money. It's kind of just like iForex and some of those things. They show you the big money, but it's actually only 0.01% making that. Most of you all are just going to go in there, throw a nude body on the internet permanently for a couple cents and then try to forget about it after. And hope that nobody leaks that into crowds of people that you know. So now let me see if I could move the mic a bit closer. Yeah, Ronnie. That's not. I know, it seems so.
Listen, OnlyFans doesn't protect its creators. Like, you're gonna put yourself out there and you're going to end up in a bad light. And the more you have to be doing her on like Instagram and whatever. It's like subscribe to your own. You just follow you on Instagram, and she blocked me. But still, like you have to think, right? You're going and put yourself out there. People literally could download your videos, they could download your pictures, and you can tell them they can, and it doesn't make any difference. So don't. And I think it's about time that parents start telling their children, like, listen, my dear, and I don't mean to say that to boys, but young ladies, you'll bear the brunt of it. So I would say, send them message all you. Don't send them. Jeez, I beg thee. Before, I used to say, watermark pictures, so they're gonna know your pictures. But then that is basically after you don't get burned already. That is ointment. So better you just prevent yourself from getting burned together now. Don't send any pictures. If the man wants to see you, let him. You understand?
Like at least back in the day when it now started, it was some blurry VGA footage, so you had to piece together the pixels anyway. And the young ladies back in the early 2000s, one of the things that they always spoke about was you don't put your face, you don't put your face and thing. And well, seems like all of that is out the window now.
Face, everything, tattoos, clear as day.
Everything.
And exactly. Some girl come on TikTok and say, I make $10,000. You are not $10,000. Stop.
Listen.
You are doing it.
Listen. It's nearly to me. Nearly. Like you deserve what you get to some extent. Here's why. Here's how we should consider this. And to me, I find something wrong in modern society where it seems like we attempt to not give accountability to a lot of women, and I really do find so, especially young women, where if somebody went on TikTok and said I deal in drugs and I make big money, and a set of young fellas went into it and ended up in jail or getting shot because of it, people will be like, well, them look for what they're getting. But young women do that. And we're like, well, no, you can't say that. But this thing is morally deleterious. This thing is going to damage you and mash up your life. So, how are we supposed to pretend like they're out here in an article attempting to make it that nobody must be able to share OnlyFans content outside. So we're attempting to undo the consequences of all of your misbehavior. Like, those are the consequences. We don't undo the jail sentence of the youth man who went and sell drugs. We don't. You're dead. You're in jail, you're dead. That is the consequence. You should not do it. And parents need to step up, man. Oh gosh. You buying a phone for your girl child to spread herself online? Jeez, man.
No.
Your phone, your internet, and your child spreading themselves online? Nah, man. Trinidad is the waste man paradise, as I said. Hey, and you know on that waste man paradise thing, I was waiting on Trini Hotep kind of to bring it up because I know he wanted to talk about that, but he ain't coming yet. We might bring it up again tomorrow because it's already late. We aren't going to stay much longer. The whole Kai Cenat madness in Jamaica, where he went over to Jamaica with some other streamers. If you don't know, Kai Cenat is an online streamer, started off with gaming. He makes all kind of funny videos on YouTube and all of that. He's a kind of wild guy too, 22 years old, young. He went across with a group of other young streamers to Jamaica for their carnival, and they had a time. Stab like rain. But the thing is, I looked at the videos, and the videos weren't even the worst kind of stabbing you see in Jamaica. Like, the guys didn't even have the coordination to make the stab look elegant. Like, alright, barely stab. And that set the internet ablaze. People angry. How dare these Americans come in and ding and blah blah blah, and the Americans making us look bad, and it's so sexual and derogatory. And I'm thinking to myself, I know I used to look at videos. Men climb up on a speaker box and do a whole somersault and drop on a lady who wanna split on the ground. I alone saw these videos. I know. Wasn't there a time that they were dropping concrete bricks between the leg? And then it had a time they were carrying around gas tanks. Like, what are we talking about? Why are we acting like this is so surprising? And
this is happening because that happened this year?
Yeah. And people wanted to act like it's degrading and so blah, 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 blah. But the women are grinning in the videos. The woman in the hand, and Kai Cenat is a little kind of skinny looking guy. Some big meaty runny the woman looking nearly like you. In his hands, bouncing, and he's straining. Poor man can't bounce anymore. And she I supposed to jump out myself and go on the good internet and play white knight to these people? She is having a time. He is having a time. Who am I to jump in the people business?
This is this is not the first time I heard this argument, right? The first time would have been like pre-time this man came, and as we do, and some what does, oh my, he's already to beg the common as I talk about so disrespect, and he's gyrating, and these acts are sexual and whatever. Everybody like the Caribbean, it's like, you know, that's what we, and the American, like, you know, like, oh my, this is too much. Babes, or they just be given head any back, like everywhere, like relax a little. Relax.
Yikes.
They like to come with this whole high mighty behavior, and I'm guys know better. Like, you're literally, you know, trash. Where's that? Like, you're dumb. Kind of thing. Relax, you know? That's be. And I don't think, personally, you know, if you're going to carnival, you can go to carnival, but you're like a total crazy person and be inappropriate. That is possible, right? But I don't know if we're able to dial that back. Think, and I was watching this sometime ago, actually months ago. Talking about the difference in the change in TV shows, the programming. It was, they used to show, it would show things that seem kind of little out of the way. You know, like they would show kind of like something that is for the time. Showed it, right? So like long ago, when they would show people smoking on TV and it was so bad. And then now they have like you and just kind of like, and these girls are topless and they're supposed to be high school girls, right? Which to me is over sexualizing children, because even though they hire an adult to act, they are acting the role of child.
Correct.
And we are seeing men and women watching this shoppiness, and they basically I would deem to be kiddie. That these are children. So in our make that these are children, they believe in that children behaving like that. They're doing drugs, they're having sex, and all of these things. So I don't watch any high school show that is very sexual, because
Correct.
for me, you're supposed to be. So I don't watch it.
That was something that I noted. I noted that a while ago, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I think people do get off on that, as you were saying. I think there are people that do. Have you heard some of the horror stories coming out from Nickelodeon and some of those child actors and stuff? Those people are evil. There are evil people around. There are lots of those young people coming up in Hollywood are abused because there are evil people out there. And they're doing those things very much on purpose. That's not a mistake. They aren't, whoops, we didn't know that this is a high school student we are acting a full-on hardcore scene with. You just as you say, some of those, correct, Diddy, some of those shows you watch it and like, you have to pause after all and like, wait, isn't this a high school they're talking? Gossip Girl, and I mean Gossip Girl probably soft compared to what they have now. But it still shook me a bit after a while you're watching this and like, wait. This is supposed to be high school students we're talking about here? And as, who said it? Crimax says conditioning there. As the older people would say, they're trying to normalize it. But that is it. It is conditioning. So a lot of the young people now, a lot of high schoolers now grew up watching, I find 13 Reasons Why was an evil show. I think they should ban that show. That show was downright evil, I think, in my opinion. But when students grow up watching that, they think, well, this is how 16-year-olds are supposed to live. So wait, I don't have a sexually complicated triangle where somebody wants to kill themselves. Well, I'm not living the proper teenage life. And you're teaching, and the strange thing is, we come off saying that this is the impressionable age. We have to be very careful what we teach these people. The same socialists and social scientists and therapists, we have to be very careful what we expose the young people to. And you know, beating, corporal punishment and licks on a young person, it really damages and scars their developing psyche. You don't want to teach them that abuse is the way to have. And we learn all of this on how impressionable they are, and then sit them down in front of TV to watch porn. So, something that I asked about recently, and I mean, personally, I find X might be the best social media in terms of its freedom for everything online. But I don't think all people are supposed to have access to freedom of all ages. X has raw in the most rawest of the meaning of raw porn around every corner. Like,
yeah.
Bro, I just pulled up the video where Kai Cenat was dancing there daggering there in Jamaica. I was going to play it. And then as I scroll down, the very first reply in the Twitter, the very first reply in the thing is raw, hardcore porn. And you know, Twitter is 13 years and up.
I thought all social media was at least 16.
Google it.
But I mean, it didn't matter if it was 13. Sharon would just create an account and say it was 18.
No, here's I wouldn't give them that excuse though, Ronnie. Because at least if it's 18 and children make an account and come on and hide out, you could throw all the blame on the parent. That's the parent's fault. It's like a cigarette, you could lie and say you're 18 and go into a grocery and buy a cigarette and smoke a cigarette, and that I wouldn't blame the grocery for that. That's the parents, that's parenting. But if you advertise, we sell cigarettes to 13-year-olds. What?
Look at that. Elon going and come next week and ban 18-year-olds.
He should. He really should. Exactly, Daniel. Exactly. You open X in the wrong settings, and people are going to think you're a pervert. You have to literally go through and block these weirdos out there. And you know what's the strange thing? A lot of people like to talk about how predatory men are. and men are so predatory, and men are so predatory. Men become predatory when they see the thing they want. They want sex, so they will become predators for this. Those are women predators on X. 99% of those are women posting those things as predators. Why? Not because they're horny. At least the men had the excuse of horniness. We couldn't control the horniness. That's why we became predatory. Those women are predators for money. They know, and they Why do you think someone ran into Kai Cenat's post to post quickly porn? Because they understand that the people who view Kai Cenat are going to be 14 to 22-year-old young boys. They know that. That's why they want their content there. Because they want those boys to see their content with their young little horny selves and become obsessed and spend out mommy's money on them. That's some evil predatory behavior. So I don't want to hear nobody ever say things about like if men alone could be predators. The thing is, women don't have the impetus to be the predators. And we see that when they get the impetus to be predators, they have no problem being just as predatory.
I would disagree. I think this might just be my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think women are more predators than men because they exercise different of their predatory behavior. I was having this conversation with Steve some time ago, and he was talking about, your children will be safe in school. And I was like, safe in school because it have teachers. Female teachers are dressed as, if not worse, than their male counterparts.
Just so you know, when it comes to the murder of infants and the elderly, women are overrepresented. So, you see, women kill more babies than old people. You see, what some people seem to misunderstand is they mistake ability for innocence. So, because women kill less people, they think it's because women are better people. They are innocent. While it's just they don't have that ability. Men are naturally stronger and they have higher aggression. So the most aggressive men end up in that situation more. But that's not to say on an average that women are better moral people. It's just they have less opportunity to exercise certain things because of physical restraint. Now, when you remove that physical restraint and you put women in situations where they could be just as evil as men, you recognize they are just as evil as men. If if you want to go down the road of calling abortion murder,
ouch. It is.
And not just murder, but murder of a baby. And not just murder of a baby, but murder of your baby. And look at those numbers. So, yeah, evil is evil out there. Yep, if your son good looking and more grown physically for his age, them teachers will go crazy. Hey, you, over the last couple of years, as news spreads better and faster, if you know what stories all about the place of teachers getting caught in that, listen, that is so prevalent. Wasn't there one in Trinidad where the teacher made a child for the boy and fly out? Y'all remember I read that the teacher made a child for the boy and then fly out the country.
I don't know when school had a teacher who was a student, so
bruv,
it's nothing new.
And listen, sorry to interrupt you there, but I think we're going to get even more because if you look at where the world is heading, we speak regularly. But sometimes, what you mean, Nisi?
Excuse? You don't know?
Nisi, what you mean? Nisi? Don't frighten me here, Nisi. Nisi, don't frighten me here. Nisi, okay. You's not a teacher too? Ah, hey, hey.
But just in order
But
that, just the other day,
go ahead.
we saw I can't. So I like I can't fight. All the attack man, anything. Attack man. We saw a lot up. She just what positive sent me to say, you know, you're really right and about but like 17-year-old, and it's so sad because even if they weren't 17-year-old boys, even if they were 22-year-old men, just the mere fact that you should look at these people just to do something and just observe them and say all of what they have to say. That's crazy. Even if it was a group one and I'm to look at and be like, but look how she da 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 da.
And it's what made it worse is it's not even one, it's a whole group of boys. Can you imagine, as I know everybody said it, but can you imagine the roles reversed? Like an old comedian, I know I'm not putting Uncle Errol there, but he's peer level, and Errol Fabian post a post with a group of 17-year-old girls
Taking back the house. One.
and the camel toe or the nipple or something showing. Could you imagine? That would have made a newspaper headline. They would have written a story about him.
He would have done half square.
He would have lost jobs off of that. But no. How dare we keep women accountable? Accountability, women? Never. Never.
But I mean, I'm sorry to say, unfortunately, this is the doing of men. Right? You know, they like to say, oh, men take a woman take accountability without because men allowed it so I have a male friend and all tell me because we had the conversation of like because me personally I hate when they try to make a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old sound like some ridiculous evil act, right? Because plenty of these 17-year-old girls is good, villainy and evil sharing, right? It is wrong.
Yeah.
And my friend is trying to tell me, oh, well, and because I was asking him, like, how would you feel, you know, if you're in that position being taken advantage of, because that's an advantage situation. It's like, oh, I hate you, but I was 17, I would have somebody to tell. And I'm like, do men even do it? Like, of psychology, to women, it has come later in life. Ever come men?
Yeah, some men. But for many men, that's a kind of ego thing, and the answer is like an ego answer. It's like, bro, if your girl horn you go take that horn, and every man has an ego. By leaving she one time, while we know a lot of men will take the horn and stay right there. It's an ego thing, and that. You would see that regularly in the police service. Lots of police officers have that kind of super macho ego to a fault, where they'd rather run themselves off a cliff than get some help. And the idea that a 17-year-old should be taken advantage of by a grown woman because you're horny is why it is advantageous. That's like saying a 17-year-old girl, she would enjoy being taken advantage of by a 40-year-old man because he would buy her lots of things. She would get lots of things. So she would be able to, you know, feel the enjoyment of that consumerism. And many women like getting things, so she would enjoy it. By all means, buy me things. That is not true, Nathan. We are made up different. Yes, that's why I drew the example of a woman being taken advantage of by giving her things. That's the difference. Men are horny. They want sexual action. Women are not that kind of horny in terms of relational things. They want safety and security. If an older man who is able to provide more safety and security uses that to take advantage of a young girl, it is still advantage. So, in the relativity of the male, because men are horny and young boys are extremely horny, if an older woman uses that horniness to take advantage of the boy, it is still advantage. You know what's funny? If a man did it, all of a sudden you would understand. If an old man, okay, the 17-year-old is horny, he doesn't understand that horniness doesn't actually have a sexual orientation. So if we have some fast, fresh, old gay man who understands the trick of the game and he takes advantage of the 17-year-old boy, would you say, Kremak, take advantage of you? Would you want your 60-year-old principal when you were 17? Would you have loved your 60-year-old principal to bring you in and yet take advantage of me? Yes? You'd have liked that, and Kremak, you would have liked that. You was one, you'd have enjoyed that. They had to watch you in the barracks. You would have enjoyed that, and take advantage of me, yes? Or how come it's not take advantage of me, yes, if it's a man? Because you understand it's advantage. Just because you assume your horniness would have made it better, it doesn't negate it from being advantage. So there are like I was looking at a 16-year-old girl who was stabbed by her ex-boyfriend, some Venezuelan girl. In the first place, what is girl doing inside a bar? There's no attraction there. You think so. You see, that's because you don't understand attraction, Kremak. You need to study some biology. Listen, if you are in the dark and a man grabs your organ and starts twiddling it, it's going to do what it's going to do.
It's took a very big left.
No, I have to take it that left because these things are why these boys are taken advantage of. These are why these boys are taken advantage of, because big men like this, who are officers, don't understand what advantage is. So you assume that. Listen, you want me to prove it? You take off yourself with your man hands. Your own man hands. When your man hands soothe yourself, it's a man's hand. Your own hand. It's like incest nearly. It's your hand closer to your brother hand. So think of it like your brother hand could get you off. And your own hand, and you're a man. And but no, take advantage of me, yes? Take advantage of me. And no, you see, Ronnie, many people don't understand this. And some of those young, horny 17-year-old boys run into the gay men too, you know. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Some of those boys run into PDD. You know, there are allegations that some of the biggest players you know on the pop culture landscape were being dealt with behind the doors by men like P. Diddy.
Well, there's something for nothing, eh? Yeah.
Take advantage of me, yes? Kremak would have enjoyed it.
But that's the Sandra, right? Just talking about virginity young. And Nathan, I don't know if you talked a lot, but you talked a lot of young men, right? I am sure you can identify half of you. Let me say, you can identify 10 men to tell you, yeah, boy,
yep,
my virginity when I was like 9, 10, 11, 12, some 16, 17, 18-year-old.
And the sad part of that is many of those men don't even understand what that did to them. Up till now, if you know how human sexuality functions, how it's supposed to function, you could look at them and you could see the glaring evidence that they were abused and it still affects them. And they can't even understand it. They don't know. They just think they love an older woman and they can't stay faithful. You know, I can't stay with one woman and I love her older. They don't even know why. Not understanding that your sexuality was tainted from a young age. Before I go, let me touch an even more controversial one with take advantage of me, yes? Look at the LGBTQIA2 plus community as adults, not as children, as adults. And see what proportion of them were introduced to sexuality way earlier than they should have. You'd see something very, very sad in that whole thing. And these men who believe that, you know, because I horny, anybody could take advantage of me, I could like it. You're being a fool. And the thing is, as a boy, you're a boy. The idea is hopefully that the society, the adults around you, are smart enough to understand that we don't allow this. We will not allow this. Even if this little silly boy thinks that he would really enjoy it. And even if he grows into a big man and still has this silly boy on the inside that thinking, ooh, I would enjoy that. Anyway, what's your closing statement there, Ronnie, before I dive out?
I just wanted to bring last thing in the behind the scenes. I believe it's in the documentary they did on Nickelodeon. The situation. I was watching that video and part of it, and the only thing I cry a little bit, right, is the boy's father was taking care of him and was dealing with all of his management and whatever. And I believe it's Dan is his name. It's Dan is his name, right? Turn and tell the boy, you know your father, your manager. And he turn and tell the father, I don't want you to be my manager again. I want my mother to be my manager. And the father told the mother, I'm giving you this child. The thing I'm asking you to do is do not leave this child in the care of this man. Never leave this child alone with this man. This mother do is leave this child, this man. That father say he cry. He cry when the son tell him what happened. And it's like, these are the reasons why I don't like single. I'm sorry. Because the father spot that long time. And the second son. And he gave you. And you just let go. And the poor child now, of course, you know, the mom is too want to get good money. However, that will bring back the emotional drama. And that child went through. All to this day, he can't catch himself. All to this day, he name calling up and all kind of different things. He can't function as a regular person anymore. That breaks my heart. Because if the fact, I heard father was like,
I can't even imagine that. What I could imagine is how much that father cried, because I could imagine that. The thought of that could want to make you cry as a father already. The thought of it. I remember watching a documentary once, and a clip from the documentary went very viral. I don't know if any of you saw it. They were interviewing one of those sickos, the sickos that target little children, and they were asking him what he looks for. And one of the primary thing he looks for is children without fathers. No fathers, no big brothers. Because he said it plainly, as a sicko, fathers and big brothers are your biggest threat. Because fathers are the men that will crash out. You know how they use crash out? They will die. They will give up their life. They will crash out of this game to make sure you don't interfere with the children. That's the person that will do that. That's the person that will, if anybody is going to pummel you into nothing for interfering with their child, it's the father. And that's why fathers are so important in those situations. I remember there was a video. I actually kind of like the video, to be very honest with you. As negative as certain aspects could be. A man that abused a boy, he ran away. The police eventually caught him. They were bringing him through an airport. The boy's father got a gun, stood up in the airport, hid by one of the telephone booths, and as he passed, finish that. And then just give up himself to the police. Okay, police, you could take me now. I've done my job. And that is why sickos are afraid of fathers, because that's what a father will do. All right. We end on a heavy note there, boy. We end heavy. But are good. Sometimes we should.
You're on the man for.
No. That bothers me. That bothers me because we could be talking about raping a boy here, and you like take advantage of me, yes? Signaling that it's okay to go ahead doing this to boys. That is evil. What kind of wickedness is that? That's like as a woman. That's why I drew the parallel, and he wasn't getting the parallel. Men want sex, women want the protection and provision. That's like as a 40-year-old policewoman is telling 17-year-old, 16-year-old girls, girl, take that KFC and that car drive, girl. I go take the KFC and the car drive. You know what? What kind of stupidity is that? You ruin your life, ruining other people's life, giving it as ruinous advice to please your 17-year-old fantasy. Really? Like, think for 2 seconds now, man. Think now, man. Quiet and set. Alright, people. That's all I have for now. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. I am Nathan Springer. This has been the Mindful Live Show. I will see you guys again for the next Mindful Live, which is going to be tomorrow night around that 9:30 p.m. time. So until then, people, stay safe, stay well, and I will see you. Peace out.